That was. They never got that touch.
Hey, how are you?
I'm right about have the sign.
Happy
So
New
they did it
Year.
themselves. Yeah, they must have. That was nice.
All right, it is 5. Are we ready to get started?
Yeah.
Great. I shall call the meeting to order. And can we have the roll call, please?
Ally.
Yeah.
Matt.
Here.
Adrian, I see online.
Here.
Corbin.
Here.
Sabrina. See Sabrina. Suen.
Here.
Patty. Here. Bill.
Hello. Here.
Allison.
Present.
Myra. Here. Sally is absent today. Kitty.
Here.
Tommy.
I'm here, except I'm there.
Jacob.
Here.
Andre. Here. And Jessica. I haven't seen Jessica yet. That's everyone.
I thought bubble tea. Slowly.
All right, well, do we have anyone for public comment?
Do not.
Then we'll move on. Any general announcements, folks?
Yeah, just like what, the Oregon, Rail Heritage Center, it has the Holiday Express. We finally finished the exhibition plaza and it has a lot of artifacts. So I encourage everybody to go there and visit it. It's a free museum. Bring kids, bring whatever, dogs and bikes. It's a fun outdoor space, and then indoor is even cooler. I have nothing to do with that, but so enjoy.
Where's it at?
That's at the little bit south of OMSI. It's a what do you call it? It's little secret, understated. But it has a lot of heart. And it's part of Parks property.
It's a partnership.
Partnership,
Yeah.
yeah.
We have a staff member who's on the board. Deep Pixley.
It's very cool.
All right. Let's approve the meeting minutes for December. If you weren't present, please abstain. Do I have a motion to accept the December meeting minutes? Great, and do I have a second?
Second.
Patty, thank you. Any discussion?
A couple of little things. It's 2026 and we're approving December's minutes.
Oh, did I put 2025?
Yeah.
Okay.
And October minutes.
Oh, okay. I will make that.
Thank you.
Change the typo.
Any other discussion or edit?
I have a request that we move the voting on the meeting minutes to next month. I did not have a chance to get to read them based on when we received the packet.
I think that's fair. That was
Okay.
my fault.
We will push it to any issue with that? Everyone okay with that? Okay, so we will push that and we will do double duty with meeting minutes next time. Let's move forward to the director's report with Director Schmitz.
Good evening. Happy New Year, everybody. I'm sorry to be joining you virtually. I got quite sick while coming back from vacation last week. It sounds like I'm not the only one. And I hope you all are doing okay. I look forward to seeing you in person next month. Tonight, I have a few updates for you. Michelle, I don't trust myself to share on Zoom. I sent you the link to the slide. I hope that you can share screen. There was a request last month for bigger font, so I upped the font size by 1. If I need to up it by 2, please let me know and I'll find a way to be briefer in the descriptions. Similar to last month, and I'll wait till we get it up to really get going, but I've separated into a few items of note and general interest, and then a short list of council items coming up that may be of interest, or other ways that we are engaging council that are relevant for your awareness. Michelle, let me know.
Okay, I will. Waiting for a presentation to come up. We're not just sitting in silence. We can just.
Oh, Jessica's here. Let's get started.
Let me just bring it up here.
And also, like last month, this is for you. So if the format or the scope of the content or the way that I'm describing things, the level of information I'm giving you is not right, please do let me know so I can do differently next time.
Everyone see okay?
Worth the wait, I hope. First, I'll just go kind of top to bottom through these sections. You know that we're deep in budget development. While I was away last week, it sounds like we got some good news from the central budget office, which is that we have a bit more time to put together options for you, for them, and for city leadership to consider. You'll have a fuller update for, I think, the majority of this meeting about how we're structuring that process. And I can share more then. We are, I'll say at a high level briefly, we're working hard in a very uncertain environment to create thoughtful, deliberative process and decision-making structure so that when we get to leadership, get to council, get to community, and they're discussing options, we can be very clear about how we arrived at what we're sharing. And that will both create credibility around those options and create, give decision makers, I think, a starting place to understand what they're looking at and hopefully engage it thoughtfully and thoroughly. Citywide realignment. This is not just affecting parks, but it is affecting everybody and significantly. So I think it's important to bring you updates in this monthly space. We have, I will be attending a briefing Wednesday, tomorrow morning, where I'm told we'll be getting an update about how the central teams are going to be proposing we restructure how the city is organized to do human resources, technology services, and procurement work. That's most probably going to have organizational, meaning structural, meaning personnel implications, where people are, where they're reporting. I don't know how far and how fast they're going to propose moving into those new service models. I plan to bring an update back to you at our next meeting, and I look forward to hearing what they've developed tomorrow. You probably recall that we have a new city administrator on board, Raymond Lee, comes to us from Colorado from another city management job, and we are delighted to have him. I'm hearing very good reviews so far. People are really excited about the energy and focus that he's bringing. I don't know officially, but I just happened to see on a calendar that he's got a visit for Forest Park coming up in early February. I also have a short meet and greet with him and with our deputy city administrator a couple Fridays from now. So I share that to share one, he's here. That's great. We are deep in the daily business of running the city, but I'm really encouraged that he's taking time to be out visiting down to the director level and apparently making time to visit key civic spaces like Forest Park. So that's great. You probably already know from us or generally that we were directed in the budget to explore the possibility of partner-based programming and operations for city tennis programs. We did that initial exploration and signs were positive enough that we have been asked to keep going in conversation with this is a little bit of a misnomer. It's USTA Pacific Northwest. They're a discrete part of that larger organization about what it would look like for USTA to provide our municipal tennis programs. So we're talking with them. We'll be reporting back to council late winter, early spring, probably about how we're doing. And we can provide as much information as you'd like here about how that's progressing or in a work group. And then another topic of interest for this group, I know historically, because it's been a number of years in development now, is the natural resources service delivery work. That's beginning to pick up steam and take shape in a more specific way, including that an organizational unit has been created with a lead person who's charged with developing the first version of what that organizational unit includes and looks like and does. I don't have a lot of information about how quickly we're moving on that, but I am part of the steering committee for the work, and there is a kickoff meeting this Thursday. So I look forward to having a fuller update for you next meeting. And if you are interested in hearing directly from that lead, Annie, I know that she would be happy to come visit you or to visit a work group of yours for a deeper conversation. Down here, I've got the council items. The first couple are just of general interest. I'm guessing you're tracking the ongoing deliberation about the council presidency and vice presidency. They began that conversation last week and they're going to pick it up tomorrow morning. I anticipate that they will resolve the questions and that we'll know tomorrow who this year's leadership for that body will be. And I don't know a lot about this, but I saw it on the agenda and I think it's exciting, whatever it is. They are taking up a resolution that would adopt for themselves a Portland City Council governance handbook sponsored by the council vice president. And you can click through and read the attachment if you're interested. Like I said, I don't have a lot of information about what's in that yet, but it looks encouraging that to the degree that they're building structure and practices and starting to memorialize kind of rules of the game for themselves. The last item tomorrow is directly related to parks, and I believe Claudio's here and can speak more to it if you're interested. There was a routine review related to the city's annual comprehensive annual financial report. It turned up a finding related to how a couple bureaus were recording capital projects and when they were closing them out, and asked that those bureaus do it differently and prepare and present a plan of action to share how they were going to get to that better place. I have a light understanding of this, you can probably tell. Parks was one of the bureaus, PBOT was one of the bureaus. So the Public Works Business Services folks, formerly Parks, work closely with Central Accounting, and they have a mutually satisfying plan of action that's going to be moving forward. So like I said, that you can have more information about that later or in a work group if you like. The last two are related to the levy. We'll be at the Climate Resilience Land Use Committee in a couple of weeks to share the annual reports related to the levy, one from the Bureau and one from the Oversight Committee. Those will go, I believe, to full council soon after to be accepted. They're a particular type of council action that's neither a resolution or an ordinance, but council will hear them. And then finally, over the course of this month, and hopefully we'll be done by the end of this month, park staff, I missed the first one, but I'll participate in the rest, are meeting with council offices, mostly by district, to talk about the 2025 Parks Levy, which has a new feature, a small amount dedicated to significant capital maintenance projects, still small, on the order of a couple $1 million a year. And there's a little bit in the referral resolution about how council will decide what those projects will be. So we're going around talking to them about how we might structure that decision-making process with them each year to decide, it's probably clear, but to decide which projects and where they'll be located, because that's an item of great significance and interest to council. And secondly, we're talking to them about the next iteration of the oversight committee, which is structured the same, but to the degree there's a little different expectation from council. Well, I will just say we have a brand new council and we want to make sure that we're clear how they want to engage and be informed and supported by the Parks Levy Oversight Committee going forward. So we're also doing having conversation with them about how they hope to relate to that body so that we can structure it and onboard folks and start to build out their schedule accordingly. Very final thing, I understand in the course of the first one or two of those briefings, your board has come up in terms of, hey, isn't there another advisory body to the Bureau? And we're curious about that, and we'd like to learn more about that and how we can engage the broader Parks Board. So I've heard you talk about deepening connection and continuity with council in your relationship to them. And what I took from that is that interest is mutual. So I found that very encouraging and wanted to pass it along. And that's my update.
Corbin, you had a question?
Yeah, I thank you for that. I appreciate it, especially the conversation or your last statement regarding council board engagement. I was a bit concerned last month at watching the Climate Resilience and Land Use Committee, and in which there was a discussion on KPIs, key performance indicators regarding, I believe, is it levy funding, was it? And that the board wasn't necessarily as a body included in that. I heard later that I believe our chair was able to engage in that process. And I'm wondering where are the opportunities to understand where the board connects, whether it's through the Climate Resilience Land Use Committee to City Council, to be the advisory board to council. What does that look like? And then also, and this comes up in the report for the Community Engagement Working Group, which I don't believe you will have in this meeting because I turned it in maybe an hour or so ago, so I apologize, around the conversation between between the board and the Portland Parks Foundation. My understanding is the Portland Parks Foundation and the Portland Parks Board came into existence at the same time, and I don't think we've ever had a really good understanding on how we can collaborate and engage and maybe amplify other than around very specific, like usually emergency style pushes towards a very specific goal, but not on a necessarily ongoing basis. And so I would love to hear more about those opportunities and what does the board advising the council, how would it look like and how it would function moving forward?
I want to give you a brief answer and then let maybe your chair and Jessica weigh in. This is near the top of my list of things I want to support you in and help make progress on with you and in support of you. I'm so glad you asked that. One, it takes time because even if all of the decision making and other processes were clear, you would need to like iterate and do it a few times, figure out how best to plug in. In this environment, they're not clear. And it's not apparent when they will become clear. So part of it is we just have to let that like run its course. In the meantime, I would say there are two things, and I would love to talk with you further about how we can dedicate good focused conversation time to this, maybe outside of the monthly meeting. One, we can look at predictable, routine things that happen. The budget process is one. Legislative agenda development is another. There are some things that happen that are predictable that we could look forward to and talk about how you'd like to plug in and do some brainstorming and forward planning around that. The other piece is more emergent, and it's, as you said, as things come up and you are compelled to or impelled to weigh in. That's harder, but we can certainly, I think I feel accountable for sharing with you what we know about what's coming up on a kind of rolling basis so that we can be as planful as possible about what sparks your interest. And I think I've talked here, and then I'll stop, before about the opportunity to do some matchup between, if this appeals to you, between your interests and councils, to find areas of alignment where you are best situated, I think, to really be heard and have impact.
I appreciate that. What I would like for the board to move from, and again, this is me speaking as an individual board member. I would love other board members to weigh in on this, is that we move away from the board being situated like every other resident in the procedural processes that they have. And so if we have, let's say, a bee in our bonnet or what have you, and we want to address the council, would the Climate Resilience and Land Use Committee be the place for us to do that? Can we get on their agenda to speak to them specifically? And if they warrant that this needs to be brought up to the full council in some sort of way, would that be a process to think through? Or are we going to be in the situation that when an item comes before city council, that we have to figure out a way to get our names on cards to speak to them, like every other resident and community member that wants to engage council?
Yeah, well put, and I take your point, and I have a personal preference, which aligns with yours, but I think I would like to go learn more. I don't have a lot of awareness or visibility into how council is engaging with other bodies and whether they're moving toward a practice of having like specific channels and relationships with advisory bodies, or if they really are wanting everybody to funnel through the same channels. So I would like to do that. And like I said, I'm really interested in supporting this specific thing. So if there's a conversation to be had about like I said, a more focused conversation to do some forward planning or brainstorming or whatever it is, this is a priority for me. So thank you for that.
I'd love to speak to I know Corbin brought up the KPIs, which were sent to me, and I did not have the opportunity to engage. It was year end and very busy. I also, I spoke with Jessica and we talked about it going out to the full board in future. Something like that for folks to weigh in on, although I'm curious what other people think, right? For something like that, that's all of us participating as individuals. That's not a conversation. That's not coming collectively with a board position. Perhaps something like that is better to have an ad hoc committee of folks who are interested and want to meet on it. And so when commenting on something like that, it's interesting because it was, when are we individuals and when are we as a board in terms of what we're recommending for changes to something or to move forward? So, and this is, I think, a good example of where, yes, individual comments are helpful, but I also think that we should be, if we're going to engage in something like that, having a board position in the similar way that we do with letters on issues or whatnot is also important. So we're not just coming from different perspectives and giving conflicting feedback. So, but in future, that will not just go to me, that will go to likely board affairs to talk about, or if there's a working group who it fits better with, to that working group or an ad hoc committee to be able to discuss. And I know that we are, as we said, we are not emergency responders. So sometimes things happen really fast and there's not that much time, but we will do our best in the future. I had my hand up for different reasons. Oh, sorry, I had other question. Does anyone else want to respond to Corbin's comment, or I have other questions for Director Szymanski on her director's report? So Angie, you have a response?
Just a comment on what you just mentioned. Ad hoc committee is fine. But I think we already have several working groups responsibility or engagement. And it will be great to utilize what we already have set up and then maybe creatively be able to bring the thoughts together without creating another ad hoc group, because that means someone is going to take on another group, which this seems to be very pressing kind of movement. And I'm kind of against setting up another ad hoc.
I hear you. I think for some things it can be useful if it doesn't fit neatly into,
Right.
but I hear you, it is extra. It is extra.
And maybe the what's a fair group should take on more. I don't know.
I was gonna comment, since we now have an established Parks Levy Oversight Committee liaison in Andre, that maybe having Andre report out on kind of the meetings happening. If you don't mind doing that, we'd had that with our previous liaison. Whenever you attend the meetings, writing a quick report that might be relevant to the board might be nice for folks to see and put it in the board packet next time. And that will keep it all together and no one's like out of the loop. That makes sense. Allison, do you have a question related to this, or was it a separate question?
Yeah, related to this, just another question about the Parks Levy KPIs. I included this in our notes from the Culture, Nature, Recreation Working Group meeting as well. The topic of KPIs as they relate to safety came up for us in our working group meeting. We've been discussing those priorities and concerns from the staff members that we've been speaking with. And the City Council's Committee for Climate Resilience and Land Use having that meeting on December 11th with a presentation about KPIs that came up in our recent working group meeting. I watched the recording of it and saw the presentation and everything. And I know that the plan or the timeline was for final proposal to be submitted by the end of December to the committee, and was just curious about the status of that, and if the final proposal that was submitted to the committee was significantly different from what was presented on the 11th, or if there had been any significant changes that the board should know about. Was just curious to follow up on that.
Thank you. I believe we missed a step based on your question. And if we did, and it sounds like we did, I apologize and we'll be more mindful. Yes, we delivered that very near the end of the year to council in a, I think, very slightly updated form. They gave good feedback, and we turned a few of the pieces of feedback into, we incorporated a few things we heard there into the final, for now, version that we shared at the end of the year. I'm thinking I need to create a little better feedback loop to make sure that important things like that are getting to the board as well, and other folks. So thank you for that. I'll share that probably this evening with you so you can see the final version. There are a few measures that are still in development because they are complex, so we just couldn't nail them down by that deadline. So there are future opportunities to continue discussing them. And I believe, Jessica, you are co-convening those with Sarah. If you want to say a little bit, if there's room in the agenda for you to say a little bit more about those future opportunities, that might be welcome. And Allison, thank you for asking. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, I have that in my report, but I can do it now, depending on where we are with time. Okay. Yeah, so in terms of the KPI work, what was submitted to the counselors is a final draft, let's call it. But there were some outstanding things. And so I am working with Sarah Huggins there's 4 different like follow-up areas within the KPIs that we will be working on with stakeholders, which would love to have Parks Board participation in. The first one is around the Parks Levy Oversight Committee role. The second one is addressing wildfire risk reduction performance measures. Because we weren't quite able to get to a place that felt like it was accurately measuring what people wanted to be able to see. And then partnership performance measures and natural area health performance measures. So all four of those will actually convene 4 different conversations, because the idea behind this is to have community stakeholders, there's city council members who would like to be part of these conversations, and then to also bring in key PPNR staff who do this work, so that we're all having a conversation together, and that the metrics that come out of that feel relatable to the work and also to community input. And so Sarah and I right now are drafting stakeholder contacts of who would be involved in all those. They'll be staggered out over the course of probably the next 2 months. And we're sort of at the very beginning of that work. But yes, Sonia, it would be great to be able to share out the KPIs that were submitted in December to the counselors. And then what I will just like building off of what Ali said in terms of communication moving forward, we built a stakeholder list, which included the Parks Board back in the beginning of December, and had reached out to anybody who had really been involved either in opposition or supporting the levy actively, and put them in as stakeholders for these KPI conversations, because they had been deeply involved in the levy nuances. But moving forward, just making sure in something like that, because you as individuals plus as the Parks Board entity might want to be involved in that type of conversation. So just emailing the full list. It was something where it was getting feedback, written feedback over the course of 10 days, and then also being invited to one of 2 hybrid meetings to do the discussion around it. And it was, I will say that the discussions themselves were very good, because there was a lot of good input that shifted the way the KPIs were presented at that meeting that you saw on December 11th. So we're looking forward to reconvening those stakeholders that are involved and getting you involved. And I apologize that I wasn't more persistent in making sure that you were there. And the timeline was short because of the way it was written into the levy, and the work couldn't start until the levy was approved. And then it had to go through council back and forth before council wanted us to share it with stakeholders. So there was just like all of a sudden, then we came up against a short window where we could then convene stakeholders before the end of the year.
In December.
In December, yes.
Who's the parks representative in the foundation?
Patty.
Patty.
All right.
So Patty just started in November. Yeah, and I will say, like, to that effect, we've been trying to, over the years, get the Parks Board involved in not just as an ex officio role, but we asked for Parks Board representation on our small grants committee, on our Friends and Allies Steering Committee, which plans out our summits and selects our volunteer awards, and then for our Joey Pope Leadership Awards. So just that there's like ongoing touch points too of Parks Board being involved, and being able to also, I mean, honestly, like be part of these conversations and seeing the volunteer nominations and leadership nominations. It's just a great way to get like more awareness of what's happening on the ground with the community members. So we've tried to build that in too, and just like ongoing daily stuff, or not daily, but yeah.
Corbin?
I appreciate that. I think what I'm trying to get at or situate or center the board is the idea that we are supposed to be a public forum. It's one thing for us as individuals to engage in these meetings that may not be public, but if we're going to be the public forum, how can we make sure that we're getting that information out? How can we make sure that we're informing the public what is going on, and how can we be that conduit or that platform or that location where folks are like, I need to learn something about parks. I want to know what's going on with parks. I know I can watch a board meeting. I can look at the agenda and I can participate civically, whether that's supporting parks or supporting the foundation or what have you. So I just want to make that clear is really how can we build up that platform that we welcome community members into engaging parks in a real tangible way.
Yeah, one way I've been thinking about that, Corbin, is I don't know if we have any like social media, or if we can, or even through the Portland Parks Recreation Instagram or TikTok or something, like talk about Meet the Board. And there's all these, if you have an idea, you come to us and explaining what it is. Or it could be like targeted outreach to these friends groups who probably have all the questions and ideas. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's like education that's needed of like how people who are interested can, this is the system, the bureaucracy that's in, if you're interested. Um, or yeah, so one thing is putting it on social media because everyone loves a video, a little TikTok, a little meme about parks and stuff. And one is targeted outreach. That's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, the community engagement working group has been having these conversations for some time. The thing about it is making sure that it's consistent and that the information that does get made available in our meetings, that it's going to actually be available or it's going to matter to the public. So I think there's a couple of things. One, making sure that we're building those relationships with public and also building that relationship with city council. So the public knows that they can come here and whatever their issues or whatever they want to champion will go will have some sort of through line for city council to know what's going on as well. And so I think there needs to be some sort of network or some sort of process established in which we're reaching out into the community and supporting this forum for public engagement, and that we're also reaching out to city council and our governance leaders to say these are the community's concern. And we haven't had an opportunity to really think through that under the new governance structure. And it was very different before when, a council person was basically over the bureau and engaging in a different way.
Myra, as far as I know, and Michelle, I don't know if you know, but correct me if I'm wrong. The only time social media has ever been done on the board is when we're recruiting for new board members. So the only way to find out what's happening at a board meeting is to go to the board page, which has been updated or not consistently. So that's been an issue, but it certainly could be a conversation with their communications about, hey, could we potentially try before board meetings the week before, hey, at this, our next upcoming parks board meeting, they're going to be discussing XYZ. Also, if you have any other concerns you want to bring to the board, every person is we could try something like that because I agree that relationships are important and all those things are important. And also people are online. And going to the people versus having people have to go to what sounds like a very stodgy, boring page. What's the board talking about? Is so I think that could be, I don't know if community engagement wants to have those conversations or is interested or piloting something like that. But I think that could be, I like your idea and I think it could be interesting.
Yeah, I'm not part of the community engagement work group, but I'd love to join. I don't think I have to invite and see. Yeah, I'm interested in doing that.
Sabrina and then Corbin.
Yeah, a general comment to kind of the whole conversation that's been happening. I do think that, first and foremost, it's important that the board is a place where information is flowing through early, because I think a lot of information can go out about why people should engage with us. But until the board is in a position to where we are getting information ahead of time or first or all of these things, then we can't make the case for why it's relevant for community to come to us, because that's an argument there. And I think that there's been a few instances where I feel like I'm getting information at the same time as everybody else. And so, yeah, it's another avenue if you as a community member are wanting to get your voice heard, but for the board to, I think, get more engagement, we have to be relevant in actuality and be getting information early in a part of the decision-making process so that community members know, oh, this is a place where I can go to see the decisions, how they're being made. And I can, add some public comment to whatever the topic is versus, only reporting out or the line share is, reporting out and then, yeah, it's online. It could also be at council. There's many different ways to get information after the fact. So just wanted to add that.
Corbin? You're muted.
Thank you. And you can let me know whether this is the time to engage this more or if we should do it on the community engagement working group piece. I just wanted to be cognizant of our time, where to situate this conversation.
We are coming up against time, so I think it would be good if folks are okay to continue in community engagement and then community engagement to bring that back.
Great. If I can do like 5 minutes during the report to address something a little bit in more detail.
Yeah. I had one question for Director Schmancy, just a really quick one. With City Administrator Lee, is he just going to Forest Park because it's Forest Park and it's Epic, or is it anything related to do with the mediation for Harbor Reliability Project?
All I know is Forest Park, and it could be anything. Could be none of the above. It is epic. If I learn more and I can share it, I sure will, but I'm guessing that I won't.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, let's go on to the working group reports. I know Corbin wants a few minutes. Does anyone else want to speak on anything having to do with the content of their working group from last month?
Are we going down the bullet points? Or?
Sure, we can. So Board Affairs Working Group. I'll simply say that it's been a lot of planning for future meetings, and today's meeting talking about budget strategies and funding strategies for the future and financial sustainability. We're excited to do this because it helps set us up to be better advocates so we're more knowledgeable and better advocates going forward on what sustainable funding models for parks. That was the thought process there. Land use and infrastructure, Joanne?
Yeah, we had a couple of very good sessions in November. Actually, I think last meeting we were talking about the equity tool, and it's a lot of very good kind of structural thinking. And we would like to have a little bit more time to discuss and give feedback, but then it seems like it's moving forward to the city council side very fast. So we felt a little bit kind of off step. But meanwhile, after our meeting, we also were made aware. Actually, Jacob was being very generous in sharing some of the articles that's been published on the Northwest Examiner. The district association president was questioning why the Northwest district, including downtown area, bring in the lion's share of developments service charge, and then the money goes to, such as in the North Portland Aquatic Center, and feeling that their 20th and Pettygrove lot has not been getting any attention. And not trying to focus on one article, but then I think it addressed the fundamental questions about the SDC, how it's being allocated, the deferred maintenance focus on, and the capital investment in terms of equity. It all comes down to, it almost looks like we have some really good topics on the wall that it drives a lot of decisions that we all need to be mindful of how to move it forward so that it's in sync with what the community, the expectation from the community, and also the engine of this kind of bureaucratic kind of movement. How can we do this more mindfully and fair, so that everybody can be little bit more, I don't want to use the word sympathetic, but then at least people understand how decisions are made, that trying to be thoughtful and fair. So we will be discussing that in our next meeting.
Financial Sustainability Working Group, Adrian, anything you wanted to share?
Yeah, just quickly, I think you're going to really hear about it in great detail today. Discussion about essentially modeling of what the budget deficit would be likely to be, and also discussions about what the process might be to prioritize cuts in different areas. So I just think the board is going to hear directly about both those things quite a bit.
Corbin for community engagement.
Thank you. Michelle and I had a really good talk we had just a few people. I believe it was Patty, Sally, and myself. And one of the conversations was really around this engagement with community. And so my hope, request, suggestion is for us to do a kind of return to making sure that we're posting the agenda a week before a meeting. If we can establish some sort of cover sheet or topic summary or something of the effect that lets us know like what is being presented, any sort of useful websites that we can, links to websites that we can go to do some background searching on the topic, uh, you know, where, the background history of the topic, something that gives us a summary of what we're going to look at instead of necessarily waiting on the slides to be produced. And I think that will allow not only the board to prepare for our meetings, but it will also let the public know what we're going to be talking about regarding discussions, decision making, or issues that are coming up. And if we can establish that practice each month of either having it the first or a week before, and I think that it can establish a type of participatory procedural justice in which we are informed, community members know what's coming up, and we can plan accordingly to have more engaged discussions. So that is one thing that I hope we can move towards in a more consistent way. And I would love to hear people's thoughts on it. The other one is hopefully what we did also talk about is because Patty is the board representative within Portland Parks Foundation. If she can report to the community engagement working group, so maybe be that liaison of information between the board and the Portland Parks Foundation. Hopefully, it's not the only line, but that could be a way of establishing more communication and understanding between the two bodies. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay. Allison for recreation, arts, culture, and nature.
Nothing in addition to that request for an update about the levy KPIs. Thanks for addressing that, Sonia and Jessica. At our January meeting, we'll be digging more into the concept of how culture fits into our working group. And we'll be welcoming Jen Cairo for a perspective from urban forestry. So looking forward to that. And new folks are welcome to join us.
Quick question, for your group, Allison, who is the staff representative who's sitting in typically during the meeting?
Sometimes we have Michelle. I think sometimes we might have Maximo. Michelle, I don't know if you have any more of an update for us on that.
I think Maximo is our current constant staff member, but since this is a new group that's kind of trying to get their bearings on information about the Bureau, we've had a couple of different staff members join for one-off meetings. And it was just because of the holiday that Maximo wasn't at the last one, I think, but I think Maximo is our main person, but sometimes Tanya will be at the meetings. We had Sophia from Safety and Security attending a meeting, and so Maximo is our constant with a few other folks as requested, and I wanted to, and I'll just say that with other working groups, if there is a need to call in on other staff members, just to let us know if you need information, because I think culture, nature and recreation covers so much. It's just Maximo.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I am now gonna kick it to Jessica for the foundation report.
Well, I was gonna report all about this KPI stuff, but I guess just keep, I do have a question, like, so should I just go through Andre now at this point that I know that you're the levy person on KPI related things, or?
I would say Andre and then CC me and Matt. And so if it needs to come to Board Affairs, we can bring it to Board Affairs as well.
Okay.
Does that work for you, Andre?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll just flag that some of this stuff will be happening not, sooner, so we might not be able to get to Board Affairs first. But I would love to make sure that if you would like, that there's representation of Parks Board voices in these 4 next meetings. But anyway, there's a couple updates. So one of the bigger things that is happening, we're relaunching the North Portland Trust Fund Community Grant Program. I know I mentioned that in our last meeting, but it is the grant agreement between the city and the Portland Parks Foundation is finalized. So anybody who's in North Portland area, you can say it is moving forward. We will be having public info sessions on February 25th and 26th. We're working with the 11 neighborhood associations right now, just to update them on the relaunch of this grant program. We will be granting up to $80,000 this year by June 30th. The grant program will open March 1st to April 15th. It will sync up with our small grants cycle. Just kind of for clarity on all that. But if any of you are involved in a North Portland Neighborhood Association, definitely keep your eyes out on this piece. There will be opportunity to either apply or to push out opportunities to join a selection committee. There will be 7 North Portland community members who will be in charge of selecting the grants. So all of that is in place. As we develop our communications, we'll make sure that we share it with the Parks Board. But so far, the feedback from the North Portland neighborhood associations that we met with, while they don't love having the racetrack there, they are very enthusiastic about the fact that this program is being relaunched. And so that's a positive thing that's moving forward. I also will flag that our spring is our program season. So we, on the 15th, we open up our volunteer award nominations for park volunteers. So we encourage all of you to spread the word and to do nominations. We celebrate all of them at our spring summit in May. It's a great way to just connect the network with each other and celebrate all the good work that is being done. We also will open up our Joey Pope Award for Parks Leadership on February 15th, and our small grants and the North Portland Trust Fund grants on March 1st. So always encourage everybody spreading the word. Our Everybody Plays Playgrounds campaign, as I said, in December is finished. I will just flag, last time I reported on the fact that we had a community engagement opportunity. I think Jenna's on this call too. But we had a community engagement opportunity that we were doing in partnership with the team, the George Park team, up on December 11th. And due to ice activity in the morning, that community engagement had to get canceled at George Park Middle School. And I will just flag that us as the Portland Parks Foundation, and I hope to talk to Jenna and her team more too around just like what can we do in terms of community engagement, because it has to change a little bit given the circumstances and to make sure that community members are safe. So even just as we looked at our North Portland Trust Fund community gatherings, we're just doing all of that virtually up in North Portland rather than in-person events. And just wanted to make sure that the Parks Board is aware that, you know, the event had to be canceled because of that activity. And let's see, anything else? Well, the elk is, we are continuing to move forward. We don't have a date planned on the celebration or when the elk is coming back. But it will be soon. You can see that there's a lot of activity out there. We had Water Bureau arranged a nice media event earlier in December where media got to come out and actually check out the stonework that is in place. But that's kind of the big announcements so far on the Parks Foundation side of things.
Any questions for Jessica? Okay, thank you. So now we are going to move on to the budget process overview with Amanda and Claudia.
Great. I'm gonna share. Not quite sure how to share the right. Michelle really fast. I'm share from my computer, but technical issues.
Dinner time.
Language. Don't mind.
Yes, I didn't send it to you too if you want to do it, but probably it's easier if I can do this. Step back.
There we go.
Oh, I just learned something so advanced. Bigger. Awesome. Great. Well, thanks, folks. My name is Amanda Monjadas. Here again, I lead the equity policy and system improvement efforts for Portland Parks Recreation, and I'm going to be presenting today with Claudio, our finance leader, who's going to speak more to the budget context, and then I'm going to get more into the prioritization process. So just to give a sense of what we're going to be focused on today in the next 45 minutes, and we'll get as far as we can. The slides are going to be provided to folks, and it is a longer deck, so there will be time to review it, process it, but there are two activities that I want to get to today. So we're going to move through the slides pretty quickly and try to spend more time having conversation about specific criteria. So first objective is for Claudio to provide you all with an overview of the city budget context and specific reduction targets for Portland Parks and Recreation. And then I'm going to focus on gathering feedback on draft criteria that's going to be used both to inform our budget prioritization in terms of like how we organize our budget and how we make reduction decisions. And those are two related but slightly different sets of criteria. This is how we're going to do it. We'll start with context, get into approach, get through activity 1, which is the most urgent need for us, and then we'll get as far as we can in activity 2, and then I'll talk about next steps. But we'll go ahead and get started with Claudio.
All right. So as Amanda said, well, first of all, Claudio Camposano, Finance, Property, and Technology Manager for Public Works Business Services. I use he, him pronouns. So just want to quickly give a little budget context. So most importantly, on November 21, we got the citywide guidance from the mayor indicating that we should develop 3 scenarios for this budget process. The first is status quo, also known as current service level. The second one is assuming a 3% general fund discretionary reduction. And the last one is adding a 7% general fund discretionary reduction to that, bringing us to a 10% reduction. The factors associated with the citywide issues that they're trying to solve for won't go into those today just for time, but that is the guidance that we've received. In addition, we also have a number of expense side impacts. So if that's a revenue side impact, we have a number of expense side impacts that we're looking to manage. The most salient of those is that the November forecast that we received from what we call our internal service funds, those are all the folks that provide central services to the bureaus. They are looking at a 9% per year increase over the next 5 years. And so that has a significant impact on us. It is considerably higher than what we had forecast earlier. In addition, we are also seeing next year a 22% increase in in the charges for health benefits, and that's associated with the city needing to rebuild the reserve fund in the health fund because they've been seeing considerably higher experience than they had originally anticipated. So, and then finally, and this is less about the reductions that we need to take directly, but reductions that will be directed to us. The core service realignment, as Director Schmansky mentioned, that's the realignment and centralization of administrative functions, as well as their reduction by 20%. So that is also gonna impact the Bureau indirectly. Those resources, many of those resources are with Parks now, will move out, but then will also be reduced. So next slide, please. So just quickly talking about the timeline, like I said, we got the guidance on the 21st. That was the citywide guidance. Then my team processed that along with our November forecast, incorporating some of those other factors, and promulgated guidance specifically for the Bureau. And moving forward towards the January 23rd, which is the citywide date for delivering those current service level or status quo budgets to the city budget office. Subsequent to that, many of you might be familiar with the term decision packages. Budget concepts are sort of a pre-decision package that are less fully developed, more testing the waters internally. Those are due on the 9th, and those are sort of gap closing concepts. And then those will, if they move through the process at a citywide level, get converted into those decision packages, and those are due to City Budget Office on February 20th. There's going to be a work session with City Council to discuss all of these things or rather all of the base budget issues, current service level, forecasts, etc. Sometime in February. We haven't been told the date yet. And then we also will have presentations with council about all of service area budget between the 23rd and March 6th. The mayor's proposed budget is going to be available on April 20th, and that's going to be the mayor's decisions about what to include of the concepts / decision packages that we've developed. Potentially other things have moved into the mix at that point, and immediately subsequent to that, there's going to be a work session in council to discuss that mayor's proposed budget. There's some other stuff that happens after that. I think that's probably enough for now, and that kind of speaks to a lot of the sort of information that comes out and goes into the process. So just to kind of give a high level summary, we're developing that current service level budget, which is what we call our base budget. We've got another work stream that is the prioritization work that is what we really want to talk about today. And I know that Amanda's going to be queuing up those exercises around. And then there's the meeting of the cut targets within that prioritization framework. And that's something that is ongoing, and recognizing that these things are moving in parallel because of the time frame, but really trying to keep them as connected as possible and ensure that that where we are looking to reduce costs is intimately linked to where our priorities are. So those three things are happening. But next slide. So just to be to get to the point on what we're aiming for, those first two bullets are about the general fund discretionary reductions. So those are targets driven by the citywide factor of looking to save general fund. So and on the next slide, we'll talk about sort of what this is relative to our overall budget. But the first tranche of 3% is a $2.4 million reduction. The additional 7% takes another $5.7 million. And then I mentioned that that there are all of those other expense side impacts that we were made aware of later in the process, and those also are big drivers for potential reductions. So in order to maintain current service level with all of those internal service providers like City Fleet, facilities, risk, et cetera, and with the health benefit increases, that would require us to take an additional reduction from that current service level. So that comes to a total gap that we've identified of $15.1 million. I will note that there are a lot of additional factors that'll be in play as we go through the process. We'll be getting a lot of additional information. I'll be working a revised tax forecast into the financial plan. There will be a lot of other information that pops up as we develop the base budget that may be positive surprises, negative surprises. Hopefully, we have enough breathing room for any more negative surprises. And now I'm just hoping for some positive ones to bring that $5.1 million number down. No promises, but that is my hope based on what I'm seeing and thinking. So next slide. So, and I'm sorry, I realize that the numbers on this are a little tiny, but this is just to give you a sense. And maybe one small, just because I know a lot of folks are new, and I want to back up 1 second. When we talk about quote our budget, we're primarily talking about our operating budget, which is in the general fund, but using general fund dollars, earned revenue, and Parks Levy, because the Parks Levy reimburses the general fund in our portion of the general fund for eligible expenditures. So really we're talking about what is in total a $183.3 million budget. That's the estimate that we've got for our base as we're building it now. And of that, it's not quite half and half, but Parks Levy and general fund discretionary are actually roughly equal now. They're close to equal. And then we've also got that earned revenue, earned revenue being primarily there's recreation services generates a considerable amount of revenue, and then there our permitting functions also are some of the big drivers. And now we also have Preschool for All, which is grant revenue coming in. So what this does not include is the capital fund. So all of our capital construction, and that is largely separate and apart from the challenges that the operating funds face. And so it tends to have a much slower pulse, longer lead time, and most of the decision making happens in little bits through sub processes around how do we use SDCs, how do we use major maintenance, et cetera. But most of that is fixed year to year. And especially now that we don't have any additional system development charges coming in due to the moratorium that was put into place at the beginning of this fiscal year, there's not going to be a lot of decision making going on there. So mainly it's about implementation of the existing capital plan. So we tend to focus these discussions around decisions in the area where most of the big decisions, hardest decisions are, and that's in our operating fund. Next slide.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead and finish your thought, but also this is a good opportunity to ask Claudio any questions about the larger budget context, recognizing that we're going through a very technical process right now while we're developing our prioritization approach. So we're not getting deep into some of the actual numbers other than the larger cut targets, but for folks especially who are new to the process, it's a good opportunity to ask questions about anything that was just shared.
And that was going to be my final thought, was just being open for questions. So I got nothing left.
No questions?
Connor, I have one question.
Sure.
The rumor coming out of council finance to unbraid levy funds from general fund, I was wondering if there's an update on that and if that will be attempted to be reflected in this budget.
Sure. So actually, there was a vote in council, and it came to full council coming out of the finance committee.
Okay.
For it, it was a resolution coming out of the finance committee that really spoke to reporting more than it did to the unbraiding of the resource. And in fact, as you know, I think that there was an assertion by at least one council person in the vote yes, that they felt that the leverage funding model that does braid those resources together is something that should continue forward. So we're really what we're really trying to do is help council see very transparently exactly what is funded by levy, how much levy is funding each of those services. And we actually just met today with the city budget office to work through some of the details around the reporting. And actually, there was an amendment to that resolution that actually expanded the scope of it to really try and show the resources backing all of what we call our program offers, so that council has an understanding of what are the resources behind each and every one of the programs that the city performs. So that's really like we had a really good meeting with CBO. The analyst that's leading that is doing excellent work. In fact, I spoke positively about the resolution when I was there. I think that they're really looking for good information, and we're eager to provide it.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Cool. So getting into the conversation about how we're gonna identify 15.1 million in reductions and also create these reduction scenarios at the 3%, 10% and status quo level, for council to then make decisions about what the trade-offs look like. We're basically trying to ensure that everything we put forward aligns with our priorities, existing strategic plans, thinking about levy commitments, et cetera. And so this is all a new process. What we know is that what we received very clearly in guidance, and I think this makes a lot of sense, it's an equitable approach, is we're not doing across the board cuts. That's not allowed. And so we do need to have a schematic for how we make decisions in a way that is both realistic and justifiable. And justifiable is a very loaded term. It's basically what we're going to be talking about today. So what we've developed very quickly, and again, I just want to shout out to the Financial Sustainability Work Group. They gave Claudio and I time to have conversation with them during their December meeting to sort of preview our process as we were developing it, and provided initial feedback. So Suen, Sabrina, and folks that I tried to incorporate into some of the criteria that we'll be looking at today. So hopefully you'll see that initial feedback reflected, but also it was a good starting point to build on. So this is our best attempt at trying to incorporate feedback into how we're making decisions before we submit any final documents to the mayor's office for consideration. So apologies that things are coming late, that they're coming like packaged with numbers, missing some numbers, but we're having to do everything in real time. And the hope is that this is a process that we can build on in the future. So what we've developed is a phased bottom-up approach that we're going to use to develop a comprehensive base budget and then those reduction scenarios. And as I was looking at the budget and really digging into it for the first time and started looking at all of the different materials, it occurred to me it's really hard for folks who aren't used to looking at budgets to look at line items and what we call program offers. It's not a really accessible way for us to have conversation about budget. So what we decided to do is to translate them into these 5 broader categories, which align more closely with how the public experiences our parks and recreation system. And part of the benefit of doing it this way, as opposed to looking at budget categories and how they're traditionally presented, is that we can have conversations about parks and natural areas, programs and services, urban forestry, built assets and support services in a way where we're not treating those as interchangeable. So basically the way we're setting it up is we're having conversations about what needs to be prioritized within each of those categories and looking more comprehensively at our budget around how do we think about non-negotiables across those? And then how do we think about what's critical across those? How do we think about what's important? Let's focus our reduction conversations around items in the third tier, recognizing that there are significant trade-offs in those spaces, but reorganizing our budget so that we're able to see how we would like to see it prioritized. Again, this is sort of our first attempt at reorganizing it. Will help us have, I think, more transparent conversations. So ideally, we'll get to this place and the reduction decisions are going to be focused on the lower priority items. So high level, this is the phased approach that we're applying right now. We very quickly went through phase one, where we asked divisions who are closest to the work and division managers to work with their teams to review and prioritize each program offer within their budget portfolios using general guidance. And that guidance was, here's an equity lens, here's some of the guidance that's coming from the budget office, here's some of the alignment considerations to consider. Go in, categorize those, provide information around which of these are aligned to levy, et cetera, and then provide us with an initial ranking. And we're going to use that to build these different versions of a budget. So they did that very quickly, and we're incredible at doing that right during the holiday period before everybody left. And phase two was basically a facilitated conversation within our senior management team to take that information, have conversation about how some of those decisions were made, develop initial criteria, again, had conversation within the work group in December to start to identify general criteria that we could then apply to build a base budget and then to make reduction decisions. And so we just had a meeting this week with our senior management team to continue to refine those. And the conversation today is another attempt at refining those even further. And so while this is happening, just looking down to the blue box, all of our teams are working to update existing program offer descriptions, narratives, getting actual numbers, doing all of this work by January 23rd. So there's an incredible amount of work happening with Claudio and his team behind the scenes to get us to where we need to be by February 9th and also January 23rd. Our next conversations are with the Parks Levy Oversight Group, with the Urban Forestry Commission to continue to gather feedback. We're having conversations with employees. And then phase four is to take that information and criteria, apply it, and get us into these reduction decisions. And then ultimately, the Bureau Director is going to determine what gets submitted by the February 9th deadline. And once we've submitted it, it's in the mayor's hands, and we don't have a lot of clarity around what that process is going to look like, but at least from our end and what we can control, we can at least talk about how we got to where we got to. So this is the high level process that we're running through right now at this point. So that brings us to our first activity. Any questions about the process before I get us into a first conversation about criteria?
Just one quick one.
Yeah.
Did you all consider what got heavily cut last year? And did things that were more heavily cut last year get a bit of a reprieve this year? Or did you consider, or the public comments that came in and droves on certain areas like the Multnomah Arts Center or sports? Did you all consider what happened last year when you're looking at this?
That's a good question for division managers as we go through. We might put it in. I definitely considered it as I was organizing process for this. And this is why I wanted to pull out categories so we weren't getting in debates about community centers versus maintenance, for example, or not getting information from Multnomah Arts Center before we make these decisions. So we're basically trying to package as much decision information as possible. But each division, recreation, urban forestry, et cetera, I think is having the deeper conversations about some of those things. Yeah, it's a good question. So where I want to start us just to get grounded in this conversation, and again, we've had conversation before. I presented to this group before about Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland, what it looks like in this environment. And we'll continue to say like,
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah,
I missed.
oh,
that
I'm
part.
sorry.
No, it's okay. I think I'm getting lost about the process.
Yeah.
So after the budget scenarios, they give 3 and it goes to the mayor. Does he like choose one to do or?
So the mayor essentially, and this is generally how it works in our different systems of government. So at the state level, the governor proposes the budget and then the legislature workshops it. The city level, it's kind of similar. The mayor proposes a budget and the council workshops it. But what the council said this last year, because now we have a council that is not a commission, but basically more representative, is that they want to see these items sooner. So that sort of compressed the process a little bit. And it's changed the process because you don't have commissioners saying, here's what my budget process looks like. The mayor is new and creating it new, and he's basically putting the first proposal on the table. They will have the opportunity to revise that through the process. And there's usually public engagement opportunities that are peppered throughout that.
Okay.
So what we're trying to do before the Bureau even sends our first proposal is get your all's feedback to say, here's what we should be considering in making our best proposal.
And the board generally, at least last year, because it was a big year, we took a position on the mayor's recommendation and we testified and wrote a letter and had our own advocacy about the budget and what we prioritized as a board, which may be different than what Parks prioritizes, so.
Yeah, and I think I can imagine this being a conversation. This is that first piece of it through June when the budget gets adopted, essentially. So there's going to be a lot of different steps to consider in this body. Yeah, so
Where does the council, like all these district councils, when do they weigh in on this whole process?
So as Claudio just mentioned, they are now going to get sort of a preview, I think, in February, and Claudio should definitely jump in and speak to that. I think we're still waiting to understand what's going to be presented to them while the mayor's budget is being created behind the scenes. And then after the mayor puts his budget, it goes to council. Council has to approve the budget. So they'll have hearings.
Council doesn't really, it's not like from Parks, and Parks is able to get council's input packages and take it to the mayor.
No, we consider that in the criteria. We have budget directives from last year. We have a lot of data from our engagement with council, but the mayor and the city administrator, as the overseers of the administration, sort of lead that process of putting together that initial, here's the proposed budgets from the mayor for each service area. And then the council is responsible for reviewing and adopting that.
Sonia raised her hand.
Yeah.
Thank you. The council budget calendar specifics are a little bit different each year and they adopt it each year officially. I missed this in my update. Tomorrow, they are scheduled to vote on the budget calendar for this upcoming process. I'm going to take the exhibit to that council item that has all the key dates in it and put it in the chat for you so you can see what happens, kind of what picks up where this flow chart ends.
Yeah, and I would recommend that as part of like the follow-up to this, to Sonia's point. Corbin?
I guess I have a question regarding this process altogether and how quickly it's moving and the type of engagement is expected. Because we're not given a lot of time or even the opportunity to look at how other cities might have made decisions. And so moving forward, I understand that this is a process that needs to get done and it is what it is. Is there any way of speaking to a more engaged, slower process in which participation could be a little bit more, I don't know what to say. There's actually real participation versus what could be conceived as performative?
Yeah, I mean,
or shallow participation based on the timeline.
Yeah, no, I hear that. I think my hope, I will say that February 9th date was January 23rd until about a week ago. And so it's like we're sort of getting in real time these nuggets of, oh, well, you can turn this in by February 9th, 23rd, etc. Our hope within Parks, this is how we're having the conversation, is that this isn't just, let's wait till December process. We didn't have any information or guidance. We were waiting for that this year because it was going to be a new process. But the hope is that this becomes part of the work cycle in a way that I think will make a lot more sense for us moving forward. So this is messy. It's not ideal, and it is a starting point, I think. So our hope is to learn from this process right now and to continue to build and improve so that it feels like it's part of the flow and folks are getting a handle for how budget is both developed, but also how it cycles through even delivery of programs and services. So it's just a starting point.
Can I also comment that what you're seeing as board members about this like timeline, the pressure of this timeline is felt very strongly by our management staff and their team. They feel they're in a similar camp, and I just wanted to really acknowledge that because they're working so hard to like make all of this information ready for to meet all of these deadlines.
I appreciate what you said. I fear that later on when the budget coming down from the mayor, by the time it gets to parks or city council, it has a little bit of take it or leave it, that kind of attitude. And here's the number, you make it work. Which with all that work, you will feel like a little bit kind of like, the heck, we worked so hard trying to do this with a scalpel, and then here's just like the chunk, and then you make it work. It's very one directional, and I was just hoping there's a little bit more cyclical, and then there's a little bit more kind of even not just with the board, but it's really with the staff and all the program folks who are so familiar with what it takes to make it work. And then if this is really the mayor is going to make or the city manager going to make all that decision, I don't know where the transparency accountability is, but you just said it, the staff working so hard, and how is that going to be coming out, and then the staff and folks who work on it so hard can say, oh yeah, that they really took our recommendation or our work. I just fear there may be a big gap that it's not aligned, and then you don't like it, too bad.
Yeah, I'm gonna move us through the framing as we get to the activities, but I just wanna acknowledge that part of the reason we're setting it up this way and doing it as transparently as possible in the place that we can control is to say, like, help us help you. Here's the criteria. Here's how it aligns with everything you've said, et cetera. And we're trying to be proactive about that, but also keep alignment with our strategic direction and the things that community has said is important, right? So we have Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland. And I think what's so powerful about it as a rooting, as an organizing framework, is it's not just a normal strategic plan. It's a plan that's in conversation with community. And so what we tried to do is pull some of the different data sources that we've used and some of the different data points, the community needs survey, thinking about what we learned from the levy and those kinds of things to inform how we make decisions. And so the Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland houses our mission, our vision. It outlines our values, and these should be, again, in process guiding how we act to achieve our mission vision. And just, a different way to think about this is this establishes our purpose and scope. So everything we do and invest in should be housed within that. If it's outside, then we need to have real conversation about whether it's aligned strategically. Parks Levy is totally housed within that mission. Our conversation at the senior management space has been, here are sort of the outcome statements, and then and those are what we're aiming towards, and here's how Parks Levy contributes to those. And it all fits together, which is why in the resources for this conversation, it was, let's go back to some of those, right? And we have those conversations. This is our opportunity to put those into practice. And just as a reminder, these are the outcome statements. They're pretty broad. We're talking about clean, well-maintained public spaces, mental, emotional, and physical wellness, healthy ecosystems, community civic connection, learning, play, discovery, and jobs that support growth and belonging. So these shouldn't be changing every year. This is sort of long-term, gives us a little bit of a North Star. And then coming back to what we're gonna have conversation today about, which is, you know, how do we get there? What are we doing? What are we investing in? The Bureau is primarily responsible, again, going back to those categories for these 4 things: parks and natural areas, urban forest and tree canopy, programs and services, and built assets. And just to root us, when we're talking about parks and natural areas, we're talking about care, stewardship, daily maintenance of our parks, trails, etc., to ensure they remain safe, clean, welcoming. This should all sound very familiar as we have just come out of the levy campaign. Urban forestry canopy, we're looking at allocation for the management of our urban forest. Programs and services. This was our opportunity because we have programs and services provided by different divisions to have a more holistic conversation about programs and services, and what those look like and what they're doing to help people learn, play, connect, remain active. We have our built assets. This is planning, development, upkeep of our physical structures. Claudia had mentioned we have a different separate capital budget, so the conversation here is a little bit nuanced. We also have a centralization process that's happening in Public Works that I know you all have heard about generally. So we're keeping that in mind. And then support services is going through a 20% reduction exercise. So we're not having as much focused conversation there because we're waiting to get more guidance and understand what that's going to look like. But that does impact our ability to provide these services. So it's definitely relevant to the whole conversation. So coming to our first activity, and I handed out in the room, and Michelle had shared a document.
Emailed it to folks during the meeting.
Yeah. So folks should be able to access it, hopefully. But basically, what we want to do today is I wanted to delineate between 2 types of criteria that we're talking about. And this hopefully helps you understand why we're doing that. First is we're working on preparing budget reduction scenarios that are both realistic and justifiable. Realistic, I hand to Claudio to keep us on track with the numbers and making sure that we're reaching targets, and gathering all the data that we need. Like I said, we went through that process where we had the divisions start by setting up the categorization, et cetera. It wasn't me just going through and saying, this is what I think that is, but giving them the opportunity to say, this is how it should be categorized. Here's what it is. Here's why it's important and how it should be ranked. The second step, and we're in the process right now, is applying bureau-wide prioritization criteria to those preliminary rankings, making adjustments. Again, we haven't done this yet. You're going to inform the criteria here, this next exercise, and create a final prioritized list for each of those service categories. So that's not, here's what we're reducing. Like the assumption is, and divisions are doing this right now, that folks are going through and finding efficiencies in the details of some of those programs. Like that should just happen. So we should get to the most efficient, most effective version of those programs. But this is how we look at it at a high level. Third is the focus is going to be on lower prioritized items. Tier 2, Tier 3 is we're looking at reduction options. What we're saying when we're putting something in Tier 1 is that it should be included in the proposed base budget. It's not something that we're going to go to find reductions. And then step 4, after we get these prioritized budgets for each of these categories, we apply a values-based lens to determine which ones are included in the base budget, which are part of the 3% reduction scenario, which are part of 10 reduction scenario. So it's sort of building up and then making decisions about reductions and using aligned but slightly different criteria. And we say values-based lens here because we don't have direction of cut X. So we need something to root and ground ourselves in that feels like it could be consistent over time. And again, we'll have an opportunity to talk through some of that as well.
So is Tier 3?
Yeah.
That's cut.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah,
So
step
tier,
4 is cut.
no, but though I see Tier 1 and Tier 2.
Oh, here, yeah, we'll go into it now.
Tier 3 doesn't
Yeah,
make it.
it's more like start here.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is the framework. Activity 1 is to define these in more specific terms. So non-negotiable, this should be included in our base budget. These are critical across these different categories. Sorry, I shouldn't use similar terms, but don't cut these if we can help it. Critical is reducing or defunding these programs is going to have a significant impact on our service delivery. Third tier is it's important, but look here before you go to 2 and 1. So that's really how we're setting that up. And so I'm gonna walk through these and folks have access to like it in a more one-page form. What I'm gonna ask people to consider is one, clarifying questions to start. Second, is to give feedback on does the criteria feel like it's in the right location, right? Or is there something that's blatantly missing here that we should consider? And I'm gonna put this caveat on because I did it for the senior managers as well. We can make adjustments and say this should actually be moved to this other location. But if we're gonna make significant changes because this is going through multiple groups, I'm gonna ask that we have sort of a modified consensus vote to make sure that that is the decision of the board or the recommendation from the board. And so just to keep that in mind, what I also did ask folks to do at the senior manager level is if we are gonna add criteria, we need to add a source for that criteria and make sure that we're thinking about those pieces because I did give them a reference sheet for each of these. So I'll walk through and that'll make more sense. So I'm talking about it just generally. So essentially where we've landed based on feedback for non-negotiable items is it strategically aligned? So making sure it's aligned with at least one Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland outcome. Again, it should be the most equitable, cost-effective version aligned with quality standards. The folks closest to those programs will know and be able to speak to that. Second, is it city mandated and voter approved or part of a voter approved commitment? So it must be necessary to achieve at least one parks levy commitment. It must also be aligned with the mayor's budget direction or a city ordinance, rule, or directive. So basically the things that we're required to do. Operational baseline, is it necessary for basic maintenance? Operational integrity of our assets. Is it required for emergency response? And is the service solely provided by PPNR? And then finally, is it required for compliance with federal, state law, labor agreements, or workforce agreements? So this is sort of the universe of criteria that we're thinking about for tier one. And again, be tracking your questions as we're going through. Tier two, critical program offers. So we're looking at, again, strategic alignment, same thing. Second, community and workforce needs. So is it identified as a priority or directly responsive to items in the 2025 community needs survey, which I know has been presented to this group? Is it identified as a priority or directly responsive to our employee survey, which just happened this last year as well? Is it necessary for responsible stewardship of city assets? Does it prevent higher future costs and anticipated risk? And Suen, I know you were giving this great feedback as we were having the conversation in the work group. If we make this decision now to reduce it, is it just going to cost us more later? Those are things that we should consider. And then external commitments and leverage. Is it part of an externally funded obligation? And these are just some examples that I wanted to throw in there because these charts live in the community needs survey. So it's literally Portlanders saying, this is how we want to prioritize nature features. This is how we want to prioritize recreation programs. Like we have a lot of data to work with and we want to make sure that we're listening to that data and accountable to it. We also have a lot of narrative information too on that. And then finally, and this is like the flexible zone, again, is it aligned? Everything should be aligned. Is it a strategic enhancement or part of capacity building? So is it evidence-based, supports workforce excellence and well-being? Does it set a foundation for future partnerships or contribute to expanding external capacity? Again, all of these are important, but if we have to make decisions, where are we looking to make those reduction decisions? So I'll pause. And again, we'll get as far as we can, but for discussion, any clarifying questions? Any thoughts about where some of these criteria are situated? And is there other criteria to consider? I'll give people just a minute to process something.
I had a question sort of generally, and I'm curious what other bureaus, like is there conversation or coordination so that bureaus are doing things similarly? Does that happen?
We are running on prioritization. I don't know how other bureaus are prioritizing things. I'm not hearing a lot.
Okay.
So
I also heard that Parks actually is pretty advanced in figuring out a system of operation and prioritization. And everybody's kind of looking at Parks as almost like the guinea pig, like can you guys figure it out? And then maybe all of us can follow. But if the timeline of getting this budget done, meaning the other bureaus are basically doing whatever they can, and are we always like using different metrics or what's going on?
It's a good question. Not really sure what the other bureaus are doing, but Claudio is in the service area space. So we'll get a lot of data as people start to propose things and introduce things. Which again, we could use to inform future process, but we're doing the best with like very limited information.
And Matt, and then Jen, and then me.
Yes, 2 questions. Thanks for your presentation. So I'm wondering, is aligned with mayor's budget direction?
Yeah.
It's under this category of city mandated and board approved commitments. I'm having a hard time understanding how that fits. And then the second question is, can you, under strategic enhancements and partnerships, as the last bullet, external capacity building, can you give me an example of that? I'm having a hard time understanding what that.
Yeah, so to answer the first question, mayor's budget direction, we got mayor's budget guidance. And so really what's in that guidance kind of sets the parameters for how we should be making decisions. So for example, the mayor in that has been kind of specific about wants to see continued investment in summer programming. So that's pretty direct. And we're trying to be responsive to that. So that's getting to mayor's budget direction. It's in his specific guidance that has been posted and reported on. In terms of external capacity building, those are like grant programs, things like that. That's a good example of those. And again, some might be up in external commitments, but these are, and the way we were thinking about it is more future focused potential kind of spaces, not interrupting existing programs unless.
Versus leveraging.
Yeah.
That you're talking about.
Yeah.
Jen?
Yeah, 2 things. I think the materials that were sent out to the Parks Board in advance for references unintentionally omitted the city's urban forest plan, which was recently adopted by council. So it'd be great if that could get provided along with Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland, and the other materials. And the second thing is, my apologies, I have to step away from the meeting. So I just wanted to let you know that. Take care.
Bye.
Yeah, thanks, Jen.
I have a question on the community needs survey. Are you all looking at the community needs survey as a whole, or are you also breaking it down to demographics? Because obviously certain groups are going to be less represented in the survey, but their needs may be different or their wants. So are you breaking down that survey according to demographics and weighing that, not just the whole survey and marginalized communities pitted against?
Yeah, I think
all white folks who are 50 and over.
Totally. No, and well, the way it's set up here is we're just in the what should be on the criteria piece at this point. Getting into how reductions are made, looking at who's impacted and the equity analysis there. We do have those breakdowns, and we had focus groups with specific communities. And so the whole survey in the context of this is all the data we have, the universe of data, but the equity analysis is part of the conversation, particularly in how we think about reductions.
Thank you. Adrian.
Yeah. First I want to commend you. I think you do, have a lot of data in terms of community engagement to help with this rapid timeline, which is great. The one part that was a bit confusing is around, responsible stewardship of assets, because that's been so difficult given our situation with being able to fund maintenance. So I'm really, confused about where, those cutoffs would be in the cuts.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is the distinction between an operational baseline, responsible stewardship are going to need to be more clearly defined by our staff who have subject matter expertise in those areas. And so this is really just, let's delineate between what's baseline and what's thinking more responsible stewardship. So I think it's a good question, and we'll just have to come back with more detailed information, but it's sort of general by design at this point.
Corbin.
I guess my question is, because you're unable to take a holistic view, so you're not able to necessarily see if there's any redundancies in programs or anything like that. Is that correct?
No,
That
we
could-
are.
You
That-
are
That's, yes, folks are going through that process right now. So
with other bureaus? Like, for instance, if we're looking at like after school childcare, like how many different bureaus or orgs or what have you handle that?
I will say, going through the process, that we're doing that for parks right now. We don't have even aligned like the program offers, even the way they're described. We don't have a consistent, there needs to be a lot of cleanup even within the bureau. So comparing those across other bureaus, I think could be a future phase process and having consistency, but that would require some alignment around and consistency around how we even talk about how we fund those programs.
Yeah, because I'm looking at like what would be a holistic solution, you know,
Mhm.
when we're doing that, and understanding that we're probably at time. If there's going to be any comments or anything like that that's coming in, um, and we have about 15 minutes left. Where can we continue to have this conversation outside the board meeting?
Corbin, I'm sorry, Michelle, do we have anyone here for public comment?
We do not.
Okay, so what I might do is, folks, again, we can come back to this, but I want to make sure you have an opportunity to see and process this next reduction conversation, because again, we have to get each week, it feels like we have a deadline for things to submit. February 9th is when we have to submit our reduction scenarios, which means we have to have those in advance so that the finance team can upload them, put them in forums, etc. So this was really the opportunity to give feedback on how leadership is going to be talking about and organizing these different program offers. And again, hopefully, and Sonia can potentially speak to this, how decisions will be made, but we're trying to get as much feedback and input before we submit these things, and check back into them as we go through. So there's not, I want to be very honest and say there's not really another opportunity to make changes to this criteria, because we need to apply it here pretty soon. But again, hopefully this is the first time we're doing this and we can continue to build on it. But what I did want to share, and give people an opportunity to just review if we have some time. I'm sorry, Michelle, did we have?
We're fine.
We have more time.
Until 7 to do this.
Cool. So just getting into this, sorry, I'm gonna go back to activity 2. Would love your feedback. And again, what you think is important as we think about a lens for making reductions. So I just shared with you how we're thinking about prioritizing within categories. The mayor asked us to put together these 3 different scenarios. And we have these specific numbers that Claudio spoke to before. So this is what we're trying to find as we go through, even after our prioritized lists are organized. This is what we read through city guidance is, one, through this process, we should be cleaning up, combining, realigning to better reflect services. So that's happening at a very detailed level through program offers. We can't do across the board reductions. We should be considering vacant positions before filled positions. That's very explicit in the guidance. And basically what we're told is consider the most realistic, least painful cuts, clearly outline impacts, things like that's the guidance we're given, and we're doing our best to fill in the details with that. So coming back to how do we make decisions? What we've organized here, and again, the senior management team is going to continue to refine this, is let's come back to our values. And so we have anti-racism, equity, collaboration, transparency, accountability, communication, fiscal responsibility. This is consistent across the city. So our hope is that everybody in other bureaus are aligning to these values. If they're not, again, that's everybody's conversation to have. The way we think about anti-racism, equity, I just want to give people a minute to read through these, and also for folks in the room, like an opportunity to even get up and look at them because they're posted on the wall. And you have in the room these dots. If there's something that you definitely want us to like consider, just go ahead and put a dot next to it. For the folks online, if you're reading through this and you're like, I just really think this is so important, please do keep this in mind. So for example, Ali, you had just mentioned demographics as we're thinking about program impacts. Like in equity, thinking about disparities and where we're getting feedback, like that's where I think about where that analysis would live. So that's a good example. So at 6:49, if folks want to just take like 5 minutes to
One thing
review.
we constantly have the situation, we have great presentations and we end up with like 10 minutes to
I
make
know.
drastic decisions. We do have work group meetings coming up in the coming 2 weeks. And maybe we may want to put things aside to focus on clarifying or comments for you to take back in all these upcoming work group meetings, right? Would that be a better way to focus on, so we actually have time to chew on this and give you some valuable maybe input?
I think so part of it is, so we have 2 more advisory groups. We need to take this through the next week. And by next Wednesday, the senior management team needs to start applying this. So that's like the issue with keeping on the revising of the criteria. Is
People can maybe email comments to you if they have additional.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Let's do that.
Do you want to give a deadline for giving you comments?
Yeah, by the end of the week,
Okay.
if folks can give comments on this, and I'll carry this through as comments to the senior management team.
I know Corbin has a question. I also want to give people the opportunity to get up and do the sticker
Yeah.
thing and do that also. So I don't know if,
Yeah, Corbin, do you want to?
but maybe people can get up and move around and begin as well.
I guess looking at some of these questions, one of my questions are if will the elimination of a program or what have you actually cause harm?
Right, so
I mean, there's one thing about equity and, increasing disparities, but is there an understanding that by not having childcare or not having Meals on Wheels or what have you, that it can actually be detrimental to human life?
yes, we could absolutely do that. But I think with adding, let's be very specific by what we mean by harm, right? So here we're talking about disparities in access outcomes. We're talking about distribution of resources. We're talking about workforce. We could do that. We just need more specificity so folks can make clear decisions about that.
Like, is it going to increase food insecurity? Is it going to cause harm to, I'm thinking about childcare. Are we going to have a bunch of like latchkey kids or what have you that are underage because parents can't access these resources? I think that needs to be part of this conversation versus, I just don't have access to something. I think there's a lot more detrimental impacts by removing certain programs than others.
Right, and I think, again, I would think about this in the context of reviewing these. If it's not covered here, how could that be framed and within which value? So is PPNR, for example, the sole and best provider of childcare services, right? So like that is something to consider as we're thinking about our budget in context. And so this is sort of the universe of how we're going to make decisions about those particular categories that we're responsible for, understanding that we do provide preschool for all services. Adrian?
Adrian, you're on.
Yeah, I couldn't find that, but got it. Yeah, I want to highlight personally the collaboration part column, simply because, as a board, I don't really think we've ever sort of seen, number one, the breakdown in cost of running the various aspects of Portland Parks and Rec. I mean, we probably have, but not thought about it in this context. And which ones we've thought about having stronger collaboration in, which have, the most merit. I mean, I'm guessing that, our community centers are big cost areas. I'm just throwing that out as an example. And I'm sure the foundation has thought about this a lot, maybe with Portland Parks and Rep folks in the room. But, it sort of seems to me that we could be having many more, friends of X groups, so to speak, maybe managed by the foundation, to help to sort of avoid some of these cuts. So anyway, just a bigger conversation about that and deeper thinking. I know some of that is going on. I don't think the board's really heard about it.
That's great. Adrian, would you like me to put a dot next to collaboration generally, or is one of those specific questions or both like really popping for you?
Let's see. I mean, I guess it's more the first one.
I'd love to build on what Adrian was saying and like thinking about collaboration and reframing how you might want to ask the question, but like flipping the narrative. So instead of asking, would reducing or eliminating the program offer or reduce the ability to leverage, but also to say, are there opportunities to leverage partnerships? So in this reduction area, and obviously it's very hard because you might be proposing a reduction that leverages a partnership more, but without kind of like you do, it's a sensitive way to communicate. And I would say like that goes to transparency on the process with your partners. And it's hard in such a fast time frame, but I think flipping it to think about where there's opportunity as opposed to also like lost. And then just Adrian, I'm happy to follow up at some point on that partnership work that Kelly Torres and the foundation and some friends groups leaders are doing on the side to really think about sort of relationship repair and creating more opportunity for impact by friends groups.
Yeah, that would be great. We did hear the general presentation from her, but you know, I'm talking about sort of more the meat of it. And especially the foundation, since you've been in this business now for a while, and looking for opportunities. So yeah, great.
That's great. I'll just share for folks online where some of the energy is. So in the equity category, we have 3 dots next to the first question, the first question of would reducing or eliminating the program offer increased disparities in access or outcomes? Again, that's very general. We could be more specific and targeted, but I think it covers a lot of ground. Second is in the collaboration space. We have, that's probably winning, or no, it's not, it's second. Is PP&R the sole and best provider of the service or manager of the asset? And then one next to, would it reduce a bureau's ability to leverage external resources or mutually beneficial partnerships? I heard the flipping, and we'll talk about that too, in terms of reframing that a little bit. There's also support for the, is it realistic, sustainable, aligned with best practice and quality standards in the transparency, accountability. And then a lot of support next to the first question, fiscal responsibility. So can it be streamlined, restructured, combined to save money while achieving the same outcomes? And then some support for the final one of, does it increase future costs or predictable risk? Is there anything else that folks online, for as we're getting into like 2 minutes left, would want to elevate? Again, this is going to go to senior managers to have this conversation and begin to think about prioritizing these. Jacob.
Yeah, I would also add just my dot to, would reducing or eliminating the program offer increase future costs or other predictable risks? I feel that, and I'm sure this is considered, but I feel like to make it explicit, that could also use a clause about would reducing or eliminating the program remove a revenue center? And then aside from that, just more of a general statement, and I please know I don't mean this as a criticism of staff, because I've very clearly heard that you've been obligated to work quickly on this, the deadlines that are coming up soon, and I can tell a lot of really good work has gone into this. But I really feel like I haven't had enough time to really sit with all of this material and really be able to devote like what I think should be hours of attention to it.
Right. I appreciate that. Again, hopefully this will just be a continued conversation for us internally as we move through. Even again, once the proposals are moved through, this is a good way to think about budget development, accountability generally. Can you say again what the clause was you would add to the fiscal responsibility question?
So I would add something would reducing or eliminating the program remove a revenue center, comma, offer increase future costs or other predictable risks? So the clause would be in between two commas, reducing or eliminating, in between two commas, remove a revenue center.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
Can I add just what Suen was saying about the working groups and meeting deadlines? There are 3 working group meetings that are happening this week that if you wanted to use your agenda, it's financial sustainability, culture, nature, and recreation, and community engagement. Those 3 groups are meeting this week. If you want to use your agenda time to discuss this, I think that might be a good idea so that you can focus your time on it. And from that agenda, submit any feedback or areas of focus. I just wanted to highlight that because those 3 are happening this week, and then you can meet the deadline that we're asking for feedback.
Great, thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Amanda. Thank you, everybody, for Claudio. Really appreciate the work.
Thank you. I will be continuing this conversation.
Can folks pass up their placards? And Michelle, do you have parking validation to say?
Thanks, everyone. See you later.
Thanks, everyone.
Very
Bye.
different
Have a
than
good
past
evening.
years.
Night, everybody.